Hello, knowledge seekers. In this episode of 20-Minute Books, we delve into Economic Facts and Fallacies by Thomas Sowell, a renowned conservative economist and senior fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. This insightful work challenges common misconceptions within the realms of economics and politics, serving as a contrarian guide to the often misunderstood dynamics that govern our society. Thomas Sowell, esteemed for his extensive academic career with positions at Cornell, Amherst, and the University of California at Los Angeles, brings to the table his considerable expertise, having also taught the history of ideas at Brandeis University. In 2002, his distinguished contributions to scholarship were recognized with the National Humanities Medal. In this book, Sowell confronts the fallacious assumptions that frequently obstruct clear thinking about economic issues. He argues that by confronting these uncomfortable truths head-on, we can begin to unravel and address the complex problems we face. Economic Facts and Fallacies is a critical read for those interested in economics and politics, as it provides valuable insights for both novices and experts looking for a challenging perspective. Libertarians, conservatives, and anyone seeking to understand the economic fallacies that permeate public discourse will find this book particularly enlightening. Join us as we explore the intricate arguments and evidence that Thomas Sowell presents to dismantle economic myths and bolster our understanding of how the world really works. Economic Facts and Fallacies, Uncovering Popular Fallacies in Economics. Introduction, Unpacking the Truths, Shelve the Fallacies for a Clearer Economic Perspective. Imagine stepping into the bustling market of economics, where ideas flutter like leaves in the wind, some dazzling with potential and others mired in misconception. It's a place where fallacies, those deceptive errors in reasoning, can lead us astray, shaping policy and public opinion with the allure of an easy answer. But what if we could sidestep these pitfalls? Today, let's embark on a journey to untangle some of the most ensnaring economic myths, from the prickly thicket of housing policies to the winding alleys of wealth inequality. Did you know that attempts to ease the burden of housing costs can sometimes backfire? Take rent control policies, for example. Intended as a life raft for tenants in a sea of rising living expenses, these policies often drift off course. They may seem like a quick fix, yet like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, they can exacerbate housing shortages and degrade property conditions over time. Now, consider the notorious 1929 stock market crash, a specter that still haunts the corridors of economic history. Commonly viewed as the harbinger of the Great Depression, it might surprise you that the actual impact wasn't as catastrophic as the legend suggests. In fact, a closer inspection reveals that the crash and the following economic downturn were not as closely intertwined as many believe. And what about the grand plans for urban renewal, those ambitious schemes to revitalize our cities? They often promise a renaissance of neglected neighborhoods. But beneath the gleaming veneer lies a different story. These improvements frequently misfire, becoming unwitting agents of displacement and cultural erosion. Through this journey, you'll gain insight into these crucial issues and more. With your newfound knowledge, you'll be equipped to look beyond the superficial allure of easy answers. It's time to think critically about the economic landscapes we navigate, casting aside the fallacious for a grounded understanding of our shared challenges. Part 1. Debunking the myth. Economic exchanges aren't always a tug-of-war. Sometimes, the road to economic misunderstanding is paved with good intentions. This is especially true when policy decisions are fueled by compassion without a thorough understanding of the underlying economic principles. Misconceptions, like bubbles rising to the surface, can sometimes distort well-intentioned policies and inadvertently spark adverse effects. Picture a common scenario where people wrongly conceive every economic transaction as a battlefield, with each side vying for victory at the expense of the other, as if every financial engagement is a tug of war and never a handshake. This mistaken notion suggests that every financial windfall for one is a loss for another, creating a zero-sum game of economic winners and losers. Let's shine a light on this misconception. The belief in a zero-sum game in economics is fundamentally flawed. Here's where this fallacy plays out in real life. Rent control is a perfect illustration. Supporters of the zero-sum game see the rental market as a one-sided affair where landlords always cash in big while tenants are left vulnerable. To balance the scales, they advocate for rent control, believing it shields renters from exploitation. Yet the reality often veers off script. Rent control has historically been met with resistance from landlords and reluctance from builders. The reaction? Landlords may withdraw from the rental market, and builders may halt new projects, leading to an acute shortage of available housing. Consider post World War II Melbourne, where the adoption of rent control led to a construction freeze so severe that not a single new apartment building rose from the ground for years. For those firmly holding the zero-sum banner aloft, the bilateral benefits of renting remain obscured by their conviction, and the collateral damage from their policies can be counterproductive indeed. The zero-sum fallacy also rears its head in conversations about international trade. Critics argue that the relationship is skewed, always favoring wealthy nations and exploiting developing ones. This view imagines a world where richer countries prosper by leveraging the vulnerabilities of their poorer neighbors. However, this perspective neglects the full panorama of global trade and its potential for mutual prosperity. Look at the likes of South Korea, Hong Kong, and Singapore, countries that embraced foreign investment and trade, leapfrogging from struggling economies to vibrant hubs of innovation and wealth. In these cases, the notion of a zero-sum game crumbles. Both parties, it turns out, can indeed enjoy the fruits of economic exchange. The real picture of global trade, then, is not of a winner-takes-all contest, but a symbiotic dance leading to shared prosperity. Part 2. The perils of misinterpreting cause and effect in politics. There's a classic Latin phrase that often rings through the halls of economics and politics. Post hoc, ergo propter hoc. Translated, it means after this, therefore because of this. This logical snare, the post hoc fallacy, has been tripping up decision-makers for centuries, leading them to erroneously attribute causation to mere temporal succession. It's a mirage of causality that can have far-reaching consequences. Here's the crux of it. The post hoc fallacy is a persistent problem in policy making. Consider the history of DDT, the pesticide that found itself in the crosshairs of environmental and health campaigners by the mid-20th century. By 1972, it was banned in the United States, with other nations following suit. The rationale seemed solid at the time. Cancer rates were climbing in areas subjected to DDT spraying. Yet, on inspection, this apparent link was revealed as a post hoc fallacy. DDT was initially deployed in poorer regions to combat mosquitoes carrying malaria, and it performed its task effectively. With fewer malaria cases, life expectancies increased, leading to higher instances of cancer typically associated with aging populations. Conditions that malaria victims previously didn't live long enough to develop. Far from being a carcinogenic menace, DDT was associated with cancer rates through the extended lifespans it inadvertently facilitated. Scrapping it, therefore, didn't neutralize a carcinogen. It unleashed once vanquished mosquitoes and resurrected malaria's deadly reign. We see this error repeated in assessments of the 1929 stock market fiasco. The prevailing story indicts the crash as the progenitor of the Great Depression and skyrocketing unemployment. But here again, the narrative succumbs to post hoc fallacies. Unemployment had actually started to decline after the initial stock market plunge. It wasn't until governmental interventions kicked in that joblessness soared, the real culprits hiding behind the facade of a market crash. History can sometimes be the wisest teacher if we're willing to learn. Fast forward to 1987, the financial realm witnessed another stock market tumble. Yet history didn't repeat itself. Instead of triggering an economic downturn, the economy grew, defying the catastrophic expectations of many scholars and politicians. Time and again, reality has an uncanny knack for overturning the tables on misconstrued causation. In recognizing and dismantling these post hoc fallacies, we can better navigate the treacherous waters of economic policy and political decision making. Part 3. The pitfalls of vague ambitions in political agendas. Imagine a politician stepping up to the podium, eyes ablaze with conviction, declaring, "It's time to improve healthcare for all." Applause ripples through the crowd, but as the echoes fade, a critical question lingers. What exactly does improving healthcare entail? Wide eyes narrow into focused gazes as the complexities unravel. It's a trap that snags many with progressive intentions, the siren call of the open-ended goal, where the path is endless and the destination forever out of reach. This is the essence of the open-ended fallacy. And that's our focal point. The open-ended fallacy presents a significant challenge to those who champion progressive initiatives. Open-ended goals may seem like beacons of hope, lighting the way to a brighter future. However, they come with no finish lines, no checkboxes to mark as done. There's always a new peak to scale, a further horizon to chase, be it healthcare, safety, or the environment. In this pursuit, policymakers can find themselves caught in a cycle of endless spending on a select few headline-grabbing domains, while a myriad of other important issues awaits to be addressed. It's easy for governments to get swept up in grand crusades against the ills of society, but with each venture comes the risk of neglecting less visible but equally vital concerns. And as the machine of bureaucracy churns, fueled by inexhaustible demands, it inflates, often inefficiently, leaving the original problems not only unsolved, but joined by new ones created in the wake of good intentions. Another guise of the open-ended fallacy is the notion that development runs unchecked. A cycle of expansion where every new road, home, or shopping center breeds another ad infinitum. It's a view that rests on the false premise that growth persists without bounds. Yet, even here, we stumble into fallacious thinking. The pool of humanity isn't boundless. Each new suburban dweller who packs up for greener pastures leaves behind a vacancy, balancing the scales of population density. In reality, the specter of unending sprawl is just that, a specter, not supported by the simple math of finite human migration. Recognizing the open-ended fallacy as it looms in our legislative landscapes is imperative. By sharpening our goals and setting tangible targets, we anchor our social endeavors not just in fervent hope, but in the solid ground of achievable progress. Part 4. Mistaking a part for the whole. The economics of misplaced focus. Have you ever encountered the curious logic that, because the front door is wooden, the entire house must be too? This leap to conclusions is known as the fallacy of composition, the mistaken belief that a part reflects the whole. When it creeps into economic policy, this line of thinking can cloud judgment, guiding decision-makers down a misguided path. Let's unpack this. The fallacy of composition casts a long shadow over economic planning. Picture a neighborhood in flux, its old buildings shedding their skins for new modern facades. Local governments champion these revitalization projects under the impression that upgrading a few blocks will sprinkle prosperity over the entire economy. It's an enticing vision, but it's also a classic case of the fallacy of composition. In truth, when a neighborhood is polished up, it becomes a magnet for profitable businesses and affluent residents who often migrate from other parts of the city or beyond. Meanwhile, the original inhabitants and smaller businesses get squeezed out. There's no magic gain for the broader economy. It's merely a shuffle of pieces on the board, not the creation of new ones. This tendency isn't limited to local initiatives. On a grander scale, national improvement efforts frequently result in bulldozed communities, displaced residents, and a tempest of misspent tax dollars, with little to show on the macroeconomic front. The fallacy often unfolds with government spending on selective megaprojects under the banner that they'll fertilize the economic soil for everyone. The hope that these investments will sprout jobs aplenty, blooming into rich tax revenue harvests. But should the government back away from all projects that promise improvement? According to the author, there's a wiser course, leaving funds in the wallets of taxpayers. People will invest in what matters most to them, flowing money into ventures they deem worthy. It's this organic allocation of resources, rather than a forced hand from above, that skirts around the fallacy of composition, cultivating an economic landscape where the whole truly thrives from the sum of its parts. Part 5. Academia's Detachment from Market Realities, a Closer Look. Envision a whimsical storefront selling an enigma, a wind-up frog that, while charming in its quirks, serves no practical purpose. It's amusing on the shelf, but in the marketplace, it's a dud. Without demand, this business is on a swift journey to insignificance. In any standard industry, failure to appeal to customer needs or to satisfy investors leads to a natural endpoint, closure or drastic restructuring. But here's a startling divergence. Academic institutions often skate by without being tethered to such market forces. The reality is stark. Academia often operates on a different playing field than the world of business. In the throbbing heart of commerce, a business thrives or withers based on profitability and consumer appeal. Shareholders oversee and ensure that their investments yield returns. But draw back the curtain on many educational institutions, and you'll find that the typical barometers of success and accountability are curiously absent. Why is this? Non-profit entities, including numerous colleges and universities, navigate by different stars. Rather than satisfying the immediate demands of customers or investors, they subsist on funds from a nebulous array of sources: taxpayers, philanthropic foundations, and benefactors, some of whom have been in their graves for generations and can't possibly weigh in on the institution's current relevance. This financial cushion insulates academia from the stark pressures of accountability and practical results. It enables a landscape where courses or degrees of questionable market value can perpetuate, unchallenged by the natural selection of economic viability. Research, the heartbeat of academia, can indeed be a vessel of breakthroughs and public good. Yet, not all research is born equal. Some streams, while intellectually stimulating, are little more than self-perpetuating cycles, significant primarily to those within the academia bubble. With the spigot of government and private funding ever flowing, the floodgates are open for inquiry that makes scarce ripples beyond the ivy-covered walls. Libraries become the final resting places for legions of dust-covered tomes, works that represent intellect and effort, to be sure, but whose tangible contributions to society may be, at best, elusive. This detachment from the litmus test of market utility prompts a critical reflection. What is the true purpose of academic endeavor, and how might it align more closely with the immediate and evolving needs of the society that it's meant to serve? Part 6. Peeling Back the Numbers, a deeper dive into wealth inequality. Stats Mark Twain, with his characteristic wit, once quipped about the deceptive power of statistics. They can be the most misleading of all falsehoods, a potent reminder that numbers without proper context can paint a distorted image of reality. In the realm of politics, especially when discussing wealth inequality, statistics can become something of a smokescreen. Here's an important consideration. Statistics, when read in a vacuum, can lead to an inaccurate understanding of wealth inequality. Income statistics often serve as the battleground where perceptions of inequality are formed and fought over. Many of these calculations consider pre-tax earnings, which inflate the apparent wealth of high-income individuals. Conversely, the calculations may exclude government aid and benefits, underestimating the resources available to lower-income groups. The outcome? A narrative contorting the true scope of the income divide. But beyond the veil of raw data lies a less dramatic divergence in lifestyles between the rich and the less wealthy. Misconceptions about wealth sourced from income statistics can also feed the fallacy that the rich only prosper on the backs of the poor. The mistaken notion of the zero-sum game re-emerges. Looking through the lens of this flawed perspective, it would seem that richer individuals owe their fortunes to the destitution of others. Yet logic falters here, for if this were accurate, then the United States, home to a vast cohort of billionaires, should be a land where the average citizen languishes in severe poverty. However, the reality is far from it. The moral of the story is straightforward. Approach statistics with caution and scrutiny. Instead of leaping to conclusions fueled by emotionally charged data, take a moment to consider the full context. Let the truth, nuanced and complex as it may be, become your compass in discussions about wealth, equality, and policy. Part 7. Reassessing the roots of global economic inequity. There's a compelling narrative that has long laid the blame for third world poverty at the feet of Western nations. This perspective, encapsulated in the provocative title, How Europe Undeveloped Africa, suggests that exploitation by affluent countries is the primary cause of destitution in less prosperous lands. As common as this belief is, it's worth examining it through a more nuanced lens. Here's the essential takeaway. Assigning responsibility for third world poverty solely to Western nations is misleading. Rather than casting Western nations as the villains in a tale of economic despair, the author invites us to consider other factors that play significant roles. Geography being a key actor. Geography, with its silent but enduring influence, has shaped the diffusion of technology and the cross-pollination of ideas throughout history. Cultural interactions and the resultant exchange of knowledge have been fundamental to economic development. Areas such as the Eurasian landmass, relatively unimpeded by natural barriers, became a fertile playground for technological advancements and prosperity. Conversely, regions that found themselves sequestered, be it by expansive deserts or vast oceans, faced challenges in building technological and cultural bridges to the wider world. Additionally, the chronicles of nations and empires are not static. They are narratives of ebb and flow. Consider the Islamic world during the Middle Ages, which outshone European nations in various domains, from living standards to scientific acumen. Throughout history, the scales of global prosperity have tipped back and forth, and the current distribution should not be seen as fixed. Today's wealthy nations could very well experience decline, while those currently facing hardship may rise. Understanding the oscillations of fortune requires stepping back to see the full spectrum of influences. It's an approach that transcends simplistic explanations and recognizes the complex interplay of factors like geography, culture, and pure happenstance in shaping economic landscapes. Only by considering this intricate tapestry can we truly escape the confines of fallacy and ignite a more enlightened discussion about poverty and prosperity across our shared world. Final summary. In the realm of economics, misconceptions are like mirages. They can obscure the true nature of the landscape. Yet, it's only by pushing past these persistent fallacies that we can begin to tackle the pressing challenges facing our world. Throughout our exploration, we've encountered a series of enduring economic fallacies. There's the zero-sum fallacy, deceiving us into believing that every economic exchange has a predefined winner and loser. The fallacy of composition leads us to falsely equate the fate of a part with that of a whole, skewing our perspective on the impact of policy. Then we have the open-ended fallacy, the idea that our mission to improve certain aspects of society, such as healthcare or environmental quality, can be achieved without carefully defined objectives. Our journey also challenged the post hoc fallacy, a trap of causality that confuses correlation with cause, and we've scrutinized the belief that Western nations harbor primary responsibility for the poverty of the developing world, revealing a more complex tableau of contributing factors. These blinkers on our collective vision have stymied activists, politicians, and economists alike. Environmentalists, anti-poverty advocates, and other change-makers have struggled beneath their weight. The path to real progress, to effective solutions that can reshape our economic reality, lies in the recognition and dismissal of these fallacies. With each myth we dismantle, we clear the way for informed strategies and clear-headed decisions that can meaningfully address the global issues at our doorstep. Thank you for joining me today on this journey of learning and discovery as we explored the insights of another thought-provoking book in our growing library of knowledge. If you've enjoyed our time together, please take a moment to follow our podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and share 20-minute books with other knowledge seekers. Your support truly means a lot. Don't forget to join me again in the next episode, where we will delve into another enriching book. Until then, happy reading and happy listening.